Hi. In John Piper's overview chapter on biblical complementarity between men and women, he speaks about church leadership and activities of both men and women in the church family. I wanted to read to you some of the things he says. The realities of headship and submission in marriage have their counterparts in the church. Thus Paul speaks of authority and submission in 1 Timothy 2, verses 11 and 12. I've written down all the scripture references in the portions I'm going to read to make it easier to refer to them. So 1 Timothy 2, 11 and 12 reads, "Let a woman learn in silence with all submission, and I do not permit a woman to teach or to have authority over a man, but to be in silence." Then Piper continues, "We will try to show that authority refers to the divine calling of spiritual gifted men to take primary responsibility as elders for Christ-like servant leadership and teaching in the church. And submission refers to the divine calling of the rest of the church, both men and women, to honor and affirm the leadership and teaching of the elders, and to be equipped by them for the hundreds and hundreds of various ministries available to men and women in the service of Christ." That last point is very important. For men and women who have a heart to minister, to save souls and heal broken lives, and resist evil and meet needs, there are fields of opportunities, the fields of opportunity are simply endless. God intends for the entire church to be mobilized in ministry, male and female. Nobody is to be at home watching soaps and ball games while the world burns. And God intends to equip and mobilize the saints through a company of spiritual men who take primary responsibility for leadership and teaching in the church. The word primary is very important. It signals that there are different kinds and levels of teaching and leading that will not be the sole responsibility of men. Now here he has 4 scripture references, and I've written them out. The first one is Titus 2, verse 3. "The older women likewise," and the likewise is because he's just been talking about the older man. He says, "The older women likewise, that they be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things." And verse 4 goes on to talk about them admonishing younger women, about their husbands and their children. Then the next one that he refers to is Proverbs 1, verse 8. Proverbs opens with the father talking to his son. Within the statement he makes to his son, he says, "My son, do not forsake the law of your mother." She plays an important role then in the teaching of her son. He also mentions in Proverbs 31, verse 26. So the end of the book where the ideal wife is described by the mom. And she speaks of the ideal wife as, "She opens her mouth with wisdom, and on her tongue is the law of kindness." So I thought that's interesting. Wisdom. She's obviously not totally devoid of any kind of teaching role in her son's life. She must be, if she's being listened to and she has wisdom and kindness. Then in Acts 18, verse 26. That's his last reference. This one is, it states, when Aquila and Priscilla heard him, and the him is Apollos, they took him aside and explained to him the way of God more accurately. So, husband and wife speaking to another believer. John Piper then closes out his thoughts with comments on what he sees as a big modern-day problem in the church. So I just wanted to read that little paragraph where he talks about that. If I were to put my finger on one devastating sin today, it would not be the so-called women's movement, but the lack of spiritual leadership by men at home and in the church. Satan has achieved an amazing tactical victory by disseminating the notion that the summons for male leadership is born of pride and fallenness, when in fact pride is precisely what prevents spiritual leadership. The spiritual aimlessness and weakness and lethargy and loss of nerve among men is the major issue, not the upsurge of interest in women's ministries. Pride and self-pity and fear and laziness and confusion are luring many men into self-protecting, self-exalting cocoons of silence. So then John Piper closes this whole chapter out with some challenges to both women and men. We will talk about those the next time. I'm going to link to a series of videos that David did covering or reviewing the work of Professor Charles Schmidt. The book is called Social Results of Early Christianity. I did, in researching Schmidt this week, found out that his book is available on Internet Archive. So the title of the video is the first of 3, The Early Church View on How Christ Elevated Woman.